We'll call the meeting to order at this time. And Carol, is it happy, or would you open us in prayer?
Sure. Okay. Lord, we thank you for this beautiful day, for the warm temperatures and the sunshine and promise of new life. Thank you, Lord, too, for our township. We thank you for our citizens, and we pray, Lord, for our employees and our first responders. We thank you, Lord, that tonight we could have a Cub Scout with us here, too, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And we pray, too, Lord, for those who are working on the library, that you put your protection around them. Be with us tonight as we conduct our meeting. Give us wisdom for the decisions that we make. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Avery, would you lead us in the saying of the Pledge of Allegiance? What are you doing?
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to reach back further than Ben Franklin tonight. Back to an ancient king, very wise. Can you guess who that might be? Oh, there you go. All right. I thought it seemed appropriate. I've never appealed to the Proverbs, but as members of the board, and therefore public figures to some degree here in Georgetown, it's good to remember Proverbs 15, verse 1, that says, "A soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger." And I think we are held to a higher standard in that respect than maybe the public, who is more free, I think, to speak in whatever tone they feel appropriate. But I think our response should often be counseled to be soft and wise and not necessarily harsh and stirring up more anger. So it's a good admonition, a reminder to each of us. All right. It would appear, Mr. Clerk, that everyone is here this evening?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. All members of the board are present.
Very good. Is there a motion to approve our agenda?
So moved.
Support.
Any comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And the agenda is passed. Item number 6, communication letters and reports received for information. And part of the record now. All right. I know, Mr. Bristow, you will be addressing us to some degree. Maybe you're looking for your father when I said that, weren't you? We'll hear from you, I think, in due course here, but if either Avery or Chief or Sarge want to say anything, this is your opportunity to step forward. If not, then we'll close the first public comment period. Moving right along then. Item number 8, the consent agenda.
Motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Support.
Moved and supported. Anybody wish to remove an item from the consent agenda? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Put same sign. And it is carried. Item 9, is there a motion to amend the current lease arrangement with Mishwave Technologies?
I'll make that motion.
Support.
Okay, moved and supported. Discussion. This is the matter that is continuing from the last meeting. We had a brief discussion about it at that time. Anybody? All right, seeing no comments then, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Again, opposed, same sign. The motion is carried. Item 10, approval of the youth library card policy as recommended by the Services Committee. Would someone put that before the board?
I'll move that.
And support. Right. Yeah, I just think it'd be appropriate, Rob, even if people don't automatically have questions, I'd like to hear from you about this as well as the next item on the agenda, as well as the point of discussion later on. Just believing that you're probably some of the impetus behind this. Give us your perspective and explain that.
The youth card policy, the main reason for that is that sometimes we have kids, minors, that come in with some kind of supervision, so maybe it's grandma or an aunt or babysitter, things like that, and maybe they're from out of town, something like that, and they can't check out books because the kids don't have a card, that supervisor doesn't have a card. So this would allow a minor to get a card for limited use without having that parent or legal guardian present.
And just knowing that you network with other library leaders, fairly commonplace, where you saying?
Yeah, getting more common too. Yeah. A lot of libraries are doing this. They're actually going to schools and issuing the cards.
Yeah.
Being a bit more proactive.
Any greater risk of lack of return of materials or?
Not that I see. We've limited it to 3 items, and it would be books. So so they can't just get video games and movies and stuff like that. So,
All right.
yeah.
Anyone, questions of Rob or discussion among the board?
Good idea.
Yeah, it seems like a rather non-controversial subject. Stay tuned here. We've got more coming. So it's been placed before the board. Again, any comments? If not, we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And that policy is adopted. All right. Item number 11, can someone move regarding homebound delivery service?
I will move that.
And support?
All right, this is the homebound delivery service policy that's being proposed for the library that all of you have read the documentation for. Again, I'd look to you, Rob. Any thoughts about that?
Yep, so this service would help us serve a population that can't get to the library. So we have, a lot of people that can get there, but we have some people with disabilities, whether short-term, long-term, that might want to use the library but can't get there. They might not have relatives that can get their materials and get them back and forth. So this service would be a mail service. So they would have to apply to be a part of this program, and they would have to get an application signed by a doctor or a nurse or a social worker to say, yes, I can confirm that they wouldn't be able to make it. And then we would pick out materials for them, or they can pick them out themselves. So they could either call or email and let us know what specific titles or authors they would like, or they can fill out a form that would say, I like Westerns, I like hardcovers, I like whatever. And then on a monthly basis, we would get those together, and it would be like up to 4 items, and then we would mail them to them. And then we would also include the postage so they could send it back.
Something that people have been requesting, or just something you noticed is commonplace elsewhere that we were missing?
Both.
Maybe both.
Yeah, I have a list actually of people who have inquired about it, so we'll kind of have a small starting group. So yeah.
All right. Sounds like a nice service.
Yeah, I thought it was really great. Yeah.
Is the primary cost of it, the monthly budget of $100, is that primarily to cover postage?
Yep, so my goal is to have staff oversee it, but hopefully utilize volunteers to kind of get the items together, package them, and things like that. So, yeah, the primary cost would be the postage back and forth.
You get a lot of volunteers at the library?
We do, yeah, and actually we get a lot of applications for volunteers too, so I know in the new building we'll have a lot more interest too, I'm sure, so, yeah.
That's neat.
Yeah.
People love libraries, love books, and love books.
Yeah, and we have a good friends group that's hopefully going to be growing even more, so I'm sure they would like to be active in that too. So.
How old does a student have to be in order to be a volunteer at the library?
We've had 12, 13-year-olds come in and do stuff for us, fold newsletters and dust shelves and things like that. So.
And how old do they have to be employed, like as a summer or part-time or?
Typically 16.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Yep.
Thanks.
Yeah, and sometimes they have service hours they have to do for school and things like that, so we get that quite a bit.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We're usually pretty easy on them. We don't make them scrub toilets or anything.
It was mentioned at the service committee meeting that this type of thing, if it proves to be popular, we might find a number of people that want to contribute to it because it is doing an awful lot of goodwill. So if this expands, I think it would find a home with individuals who want to contribute to it.
Something that even at the library itself you could advertise the need for the opportunity to give. Yeah, is that what you mean? Something that would advertise itself there to say if you'd like to help with the homebound service.
I think we'd be all open to that, but I think word of mouth would be very effective also.
Okay.
And it's a very inexpensive way to make the library even more valuable to the community and reach people that get in there. So, yeah.
Great.
Excellent idea.
Yeah. And quite frankly, I mean, realize that our older population isn't a lot of them digital savvy. They want the books, they want the hands. So, you are, of course, and you're not older either yet, Rich, but I'm sure we
selfie.
I was going to say the same
I
thing.
can even take a selfie of me and my wife on his Facebook, Could be better than that.
All right. Any comments? Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign, and that policy is likewise adopted. If you take a seat just for a moment, Rob, we're gonna allow Mr. Valerius here to speak to us here, I think, during the second public comment period. Didn't know you were gonna be on that quick, did you, Ron? Here's your chance. If you'd like to come and address the board. I'll just say it's good to see you, Ron, although I wish you had brought me a Mountain Dew, which was your custom, and really made me more subdued at these meetings the past couple of years.
Next time. The purpose here today is affordable housing. It's a huge problem that most people don't realize because most are in a home and bought it years ago. And just some examples I want to share with you as I work with prospective buyers. According to the multiple listing service on April 1, between the price range of under $200,000 in Georgetown Township, 2 homes for sale. In Granville, 2 homes for sale. In Hudsonville, 0 homes for sale. What this triggers at this point is there's a greater demand than there is supply. And you're seeing, and this has happened for some time, multiple offers. Not unusual to see offers go $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 above the asking problem. Here's your next problem. That young couple that got married, went to Jenison all these years, want to start a new family in Jenison like their parents. You want to rent a 1-bedroom, it's $900 a month. If you want to rent a 2-bedroom in Granville, it's $1,500 a month. And if you want to rent a 3-bedroom home, you're between the range of $1,500 to $1,800. What's interesting to me, if you buy your average house today, and all of you think about it when you bought your first house, the average price today is $200,000. That is the entry price today moving into Georgetown Township. If you put 5% down, which would be 10%, interest rate 4.5, 30 years, with taxes and insurance, you're at about $1,300 a month for an entry home in Jenison. Not to mention the car loan, the credit card, the student loans that they may have. Now, there's a day going to come when we're going to have to pay for the consequences of our national debt, and we're going to have inflation one day, and we're going to get back to mortgages 7, 8, 9%, which are still good rates. For a $200,000 home, that means $1,862 a month. Let's look 5 years from now. So that home goes up 5% per year, which is not unusual. That house will be worth $255,000. With 5% down at 4.5%, 30 years, it's a $1,634 month payment. If it goes to 9%, which is possible 5 years from now, that payment is almost $2,350. We're at the borderline of a crisis because those, what I call is, what's going to happen to all of your equity? What's going to happen to what I call the domino effect? The market's working very well because of low interest rates, but if you don't have a vehicle for the first-time home buyer to buy that $100,000 to $200,000 price range, then the next person can't buy the $250,000 and the next one can't buy the $350,000 and therefore.
This is what I'd say, Ron, because you know the typical time constraint. However, I would say you've done a good job of characterizing the problem. And while I want to speak to you afterward about what you see in more depth in terms of solutions, the board can indulge me the liberty of giving you a little bit more time here to, in a nutshell, say, look, this is the solution direction that I would see us needing to take for this. If you take a minute or two to just kind of give the big picture, I'll speak with you at length afterward.
I'll just use Grand Haven for an example. I'm going to call it attitude. I happened to make a presentation. I was asked to their board. And their attitude is this. If you grew up in Grand Haven, we want you to live in Grand Haven for the rest of your life if you choose to do so. And we realize that affordable housing today is a problem, and we are going to work hard and get experts together and form some options. Here are some options. Go back to World War II. Wherever you drive by today in any new subdivision, what do you see? 3-stall garages, 2,500 plus square feet. You see nothing on the market for that first-time home buyer, 800 square feet or less. None. And the reason why the builders are not building them, why would they? At a 10% profit at, we'll just use a number of 200,000 versus a house they can now build for 400,000. There's a whole lot of money, more money at the 400 versus the 200. But you as a board do have some options. And what I mean by after World War II, all these military people came back. You know what? They were content and happy and didn't have these high expectations that they came back to these little 2-bedroom ranches, 800 square feet, single driveway on a 40-foot lot. Most places you got to have an 80-foot, 100-foot, so now we're reducing the cost in half. The problem with a 2-bedroom, you can't expand. But the option that they didn't have back when the soldiers were coming back, today you can put a regular lot and dig out a cutting out of the concrete in the basement and put a daylight window for a future bathroom, future bedroom.
All right.
And then the key is you build a detached garage so that accommodates on the 3-foot lot. My point is the expectations is not every first-time buyer can afford all the nice things. Reduce the square footage, reduce the lot, and also look at the option of manufactured homes. They're different than what they were 20 years ago.
Sure. I used to only want to live in one years ago. But you're starting a good conversation or a potentially important conversation, which I'd like to pick up with you post-meeting today. I'd say the rise of the McMansion is regrettable to some, I'm sure, that everyone has to have the bigger and better. I mean, I think back on the houses I saw as a young child, and you're right, they aren't the type that are typically built. But I still think of my sister who lived on 14th Avenue or off 14th, I think Fairway or whatever it is. Very small home. That still exists there. That's very small. We have at least a decent variety of homes and home sizes in Jenison, albeit the market as a whole has shifted upward over time, and certainly that's problematic. But I see other communities having worse problems, but we're not immune to it. It's something that I'd like to talk with you about. So I appreciate you starting that conversation. I feel a little bit indebted to the council not to go too deeply at this time, but do you feel like you had a chance to at least present in big picture form, Ron?
Yeah, I would like to have the option, if the board is interested, for me to go further in detail with a subcommittee. There is additional information that I may have available. I'm not able to provide my source.
Sure.
You know, one has always talked about the issues in down payment, which it is.
Yeah.
There is an organization that has $100,000 that is willing to give $3,000 to each prospective buyer, and most of them have been pre-qualified for a mortgage.
Okay, so
but the problem is they can't buy within our community.
In our conversation, then, I'd like to determine maybe if that conversation would be taken up in one of our committees, which one would best fit. So be sure, if you've got a moment, to stick around. We're nearly done.
Okay. May I drop this off to everybody?
Sure, yeah. Thank you. All right. Anyone else wish to address the board at this time? All right. Seeing none, we've got discussion and general information, which we have one point in particular. Anyone else is free to, of course, bring up any other additional item. But let's tackle that one first. It's itemized as 13.1. A draft of the study and meeting room policy for Georgetown Public Library, which we've all received and read and seems fairly well written. I especially like the legalese about indemnification and so on against liability. But there again, Rob, would it be all right if we had Rob address this as well on the front end, since I think you have some impetus behind this?
The goal of this was to start the whole process kind of early so that we do have time if we need to make changes or whatever to the policy and discuss it. So in the new library, we're going to have a number of study rooms and meeting rooms. So we just have to kind of figure out what the use is, and set the parameters in advance for it. So, did a lot of research of different libraries' policies. That's probably where a lot of the legalese came from. So kind of accumulated what I thought was the best and tried to anticipate what we might run into and what we might want to use it for. So put this together and yeah.
I'll say on the front end of the discussion, I appreciate the initiative because, each one of our employees has their passion spot, if you will, their area, and you ought to feel empowered to examine your area and figure out what is it we're, not doing perhaps that we should be doing or doing better the things we do. And you've got other resources and people you talk to that we won't routinely cross paths with. And so, there's things that we ought to have in place that you're going to discover before we will. So I appreciate you doing the legwork and looking at other people's verbiage and trying to cobble together something that seems like it covers the bases. So with that being said, comments, questions for Rob, and discussion among us. This is just a discussion item. It's not a motion at this point.
I think I read through it, and it's very well done. I mean, I know you pull a lot from other sources, but obviously that's what we all do in order to make something that speaks to what we will run into with our new facility. And I think it's I'm impressed. I don't see any hang-ups.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a community asset, and this gives opportunity for community members to use the study room or the meeting room, and you have the various parameters well spelled out, I think, and very clear.
Did the board feel like, I know it was clear that we don't want, for example, multi-level marketing meetings and so on in a for-profit.
Right.
Not-for-profit or individual, do you think it came through clearly enough that if you were an individual in the community and you saw these policies, you'd feel welcome to use that for a community or small group purpose that was consistent with the policy? Did you?
I did.
Yeah. Okay.
I did. I didn't think that there were any negative connotations like, oh gosh, I've got to do this. I think it was very clear so that it's the same. Everything is the same for every person.
Yeah. Sure.
My one question is it accurate that there's some spaces that will fall under the study rooms, and there's some spaces that will be meeting rooms? Underneath the meeting rooms headline, where you have the sentence, the library expressly prohibits the use of these rooms for these purposes. It's the multi-level marketing, political rallies or meetings, religious services. That sentence says it's under meeting rooms, but that sentence says the library expressly prohibits the use of study rooms for the following purposes. And so I would just want to change that to meeting rooms, or somebody's going to say, oh, we're not in a study room. You know what I mean? So that was my only thought. Other than that, I love it. I love your foresight to be ahead of the ball on this. I love that we are talking about the youngest members of our community and then the homebound and, older members of our community, and now our public spaces. It feels good, and it feels, like we're staying ahead of the curve on these things. So thanks for your leadership in that regard.
My concern at the services committee was a few weeks ago I met an instructor, and at his community he operates, as a teacher, he operates at a local library, and his students come on a rotating basis while he is there. I think that's going to be a challenge for us. You can say, well, that's educational, but it's a for-profit business. And he books that room continually all day long and teaches out of it.
Why does he do that?
Because he works for a charter school, and it's much of it's online, but then again he meets with those students, but it's on a rotating basis. And
see, I have an issue with that.
Oh, I do too. That was one of
I don't think that should be allowed.
But what about like the person who is going to privately tutor? Like I often privately tutor, and sometimes I don't, if it's like a Saturday and I don't know the kid well, I wouldn't want to be in in my empty school building classroom with them, but their parent is going to pay me to tutor them, then am I allowed to book a study room because they're going to pay me but I am a tax-paying member of the community. You know what I mean? I think that it's not the exact same situation, but...
That's a little different type situation, I think.
It's still for profit. I mean, for profit.
I think that there's a lot of people that, I mean, I have privately tutored in our existing library and just on a table in the corner many times through the years. And so I think that that's worth noting, but it's similar to, I didn't mean to take your podium. It's similar to...
This is a concern, and you're going to have people push the envelope on this. I think Rob addressing this now is fantastic. And I'd like to give him the flexibility that if we see some red flags go up, that we maybe modify our policy or leave it to his discretion. But this gentleman booked it virtually all day long. And when we originally were talking about a library, I had individuals in the community come up and say, well, this would be a wonderful place for me to operate my business and have people come in. I'm like Rich, I'm concerned about that. It's one thing to have groups occasionally, but if you're making a profit and using the facility when you could rent a storefront, but you're saving money by not renting a storefront, it's a tough one. I don't think it's going to happen that often, but I think that once it does happen, if Rob doesn't address it, we could all of a sudden have a change.
So what we're saying in response to Becky's example is you might well have to do as you've done in the past, which is you don't have a meeting room. You have wherever you can sit down. And if you look to be tutoring somebody, I guess we don't care so much whether in fact they might be paying or they might not be paying. We don't know, but as long as you're not signing up a meeting room, you're probably excluded from doing so. Is that the consequences you'd see, Rob?
Yeah, and the nice thing is that with some of these meeting rooms, so some will be where you don't reserve them in advance. They're just first come, first serve. Some will be reservable in advance, but it still has, that reservation still always has to be approved by one of us. So if it is the case of there's somebody who's on there every day showing up, then we can simply say, nope, sorry, we got to keep it open for some other people too.
Yeah.
So it gives us a little freedom without
addressing the use of
leasing it too much.
And that's the part I wanted to mention too, but also we know there's going to be some of these issues and some are going to slip through. And I think the whole idea is though we'll just have to address it, like you said, as they come. And, you know, we're not going to verify every situation if they're using it one or two times and they're a local community resident, and it's just going to happen.
What have you seen, Dan?
What have you
seen? What have you seen? Have you seen it?
We don't have that space available now, so it's not an issue, and so it's not been a problem. But I'm just saying, if we have that example, we'll stop it, or we'll bring it and change the policy to stop it. So,
and I would agree with that. I think this is an excellent beginning, and we've got, like I said earlier, we have the parameters laid out pretty clearly, and we have the meeting room and we have the study rooms, and let's utilize them and let's see how it works. And I'm sure we'll have to make adjustments and maybe some tweaks here and there, but at least we have a direction. And so I'm in favor of what you've put together here.
That's what we said at services too, that, you know, a lot of these things we're going to have to assess as time goes on.
Right. You can't anticipate every eventuality.
Right.
You try to think through every scenario, but
you can't.
The public always comes up with something.
All three of them today were excellent ideas. So keep coming up with them. This is wonderful.
Thank you very much.
I like it. I mean, our senior center could do the same, and other places when they see things that are missing or could be better. Yeah, we like it when you bring it to us.
You might get sick of me though if I keep coming every time.
The same problem, same type of problem can occur at the senior center as well.
Yeah.
I just have a question, Mr. Chairman, and that is, I know this is up for discussion today, but is it appropriate to make the motion to move to adopt this? Because
it sounds like we're happy with that, right?
And I think, I would be in favor of doing that.
I would say the plan was to send it back to services, so.
I'm sorry, say it again?
The plan was to send it back to services.
Well, there's certainly no rush on it. It's not built yet. We don't have the rooms.
Got a couple years.
Unless they surprise us and they have it built in the next couple weeks, it'd be great, but.
No, I know we will have a problem with the tutors because I've been there, Monday nights, Wednesday nights, Thursdays, and there's the same people in the back corner tutoring, and then a couple in the kind of center area. So I'm sure they're chomping at the bit.
That's okay, right? I mean, if they're in...
As long as it's for free, absolutely, I love it. But once you start charging, that's for profit.
Yeah, you just won't know, though.
Well, and that's just it, is how do we determine?
So then
when you
they're
see the
not
same
renting a
people
room.
there,
You're not gonna go around and ask them.
No.
well, I think we need
I mean,
to
why
find
would
out.
we invade someone's privacy in that way?
Right.
Yeah.
And if they're not using a room, if they're using that common space, then
Mhm.
it's kind of the same as just somebody sitting there reading.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm talking for meeting rooms, if somebody's booking meeting rooms to tutor. It's gonna be pretty apparent. When the parents come to pick up, they'll ask, are you being charged?
I think we were in consensus that you're right. I mean, not to book a meeting room, right? I mean, am I right about that? We were saying a
Right.
moment ago
Right.
would be forbidden. So
Yeah.
in the more general space, I suppose you would know. And okay, all right. Glad you made that clarification. So with that in mind, I mean, I would ask people in services, if one of you wanted to move and another approve, I feel comfortable that we didn't usurp your authority, if you will.
At the time, we just want to make sure everyone had some input.
Yeah.
But I'm certainly for that. I'll move that we adopt.
And I'll support it.
All right.
Do you feel, Jen or Carol, like it needs to go back to services for some reason? Do you feel like there's markup that committee needs to do or whatever?
No.
I don't feel that at all. And I think if we pass it tonight and then we can, with time, assess it, just like we said that with the kids policy too. If there's something that comes up, if Rob sees that there's a problem, on down the road, then he can come to us and we can take it up then.
Okay. And I think there was consensus in all your comments in terms of guarding that room for proper purpose. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, in my thing, like always, is what's the rush? I mean, what's the rush?
Yeah.
I was kind of looking forward to this coming back, so I went through it to see what changes there were. But I didn't find tooth comb because I knew it was coming back to services. I wanted input from the board because it was a discussion item. And every time we rush into stuff is when we have issues like the trees along Chicago Drive, which we rushed into, got rejected.
It's a fair comment.
Wave, which we rushed on that one. I said slow it down, and here we are reversing on that one. Just there's no reason.
Yeah. No, there truly is no reason.
Now, on the other hand, too, I don't want to rush and be the only item on the services. Like our finance committee meeting, which was 7 minutes long, and we are going to limit short ones like that to save money, but then we had a 7-minute meeting. So I wouldn't want it to turn into another 7-minute meeting.
It happened because you wanted smaller government, and we're trying to be smaller, more concise, shorter in all respects. The government that governs less, governs fast. No, I get your point. I'm not in any rush on it. If there's enough hesitation, anybody shares concern and wish for it to come back before us, it feels a bit like the two policies previous that we considered as a board, and I don't see any difference, so we can always tweak it later. It's not hard to do. We just proved it here. So personally, I think if we adopted and you were to come up with something, we want to have it open for another, 8 months or whatever. Let's tweak it again if needed.
And that was our plan, is to re-examine these items down the road just to see.
All right.
I'm not opposed to it. I'm just opposed to rushing.
Okay. Anybody else object to voting on it tonight or have a problem with it?
Motion's on for us.
So hearing no one else, seeing no one else, then all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign?
Aye.
All right. That motion is carried. Any other items of discussion tonight before we adjourn? All right. Hearing none, is there a motion?
I would like to get a quick update on 200 Baldwin. For the rest of the board, since it was part of the 7-minute finance committee meeting.
It's up to the board. The buyer is still trying to work out the arrangements based on whether he split it and buy both parcels. He only wanted to buy one of the two. Now he's looking at buying both. He still hasn't, signed anything, and we haven't seen a finished plan yet. But that's kind of where we're at. But they still are showing interest in purchasing it, and then building one building because they have tenants for one, and then holding off on a second building until they have tenants. But again, we haven't closed. So
Is Starbucks still their tenant for the one building? Okay.
Were they planning to split those and make it 2 separate parcels?
Correct, that's their plan, yes. They wanted to just buy one at first, but now they realize we won't do that, and so they're looking at buying both parcels, or the entire parcel still that we talked about, and then splitting it themselves in one building at a time.
It's worth noting also in terms of following up on previous issues that discussions are ongoing still with the Chicago Drive easement issue, and not been fully and finally resolved, so we'll wait to deal with that probably next meeting or soon. So,
And then my other issue I had was getting back to the lease agreement at Rush Creek Park. Do we have that drawing showing, it's the property that's outside the fence area, which is part of their lease? And I've talked to a number of people, and they're just, how is it that that's not part of their original lease? They're asking for more of our land, which they don't have a right to lease out, and they're cutting us in. They're getting a portion of it, half of it, for leasing our property. We should be getting all of it, because it's not part of their lease agreement.
if I understand you right, because I remember that issue, the board voted, and it is finished. So we can't very well at this point revisit it.
We could rescind it.
I don't think we can. I don't think.
Send a motion?
Well, so you're looking for support to potentially rescind.
No, I just wanted, we're discussion, if anybody's, now that the facts are out, because sometimes stuff is on the agenda and, the information is there, but people don't read it and then ask questions that are already there, so the more information, the better.
Yeah. I know I've had personal discussion with you about it, so I don't have anything more to add. Anyone else? No. All right.
So I won't make a motion to rescind, I won't have your support, so.
All right.
Anyone, bring it up.
Anything else, Michael, or anyone else, anything at this time? I know there's a utility meeting tonight. All right, so hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn? So moved.
Support.
Supported, all in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.